Hey guys, it's Dom here, back with another archetype enhancement video, but today I've got something kind of based off cards already in the game, but hasn't actually been done yet. So there's lots of cards already in the game which work with, say, singleton decks and only have their abilities if your deck's made like that. So I thought I'd make a card which has that restriction, but for each of the races. And starting off, we have Malakath's Chosen, a 6-cost 4/4, and his ability is Summon. If all creatures in your starting deck are orcs, then this card will gain +3 power, +6 health, breakthrough, and guard, as long as you also control another orc. So this kind of sticks with that orcish theme of having another one of them on the field and working together. And it also works quite well as a defensive wall, as it will become a 7/10. And as it has breakthrough as well, it does mean it still has some form of aggressive power. This also is because it's got a lot of health, but it doesn't have anything that stops it from like lethal or removal. It's not too overpowered. Obviously, for its price, it is very strong. But with all these cards, you need to remember that the restriction is the deck has to only have creatures which are one type. And for most of these, that really cuts off a lot of plays that they could be doing. Okay, so next we have Halfinger Bladesman, a 6-cost 6/6, and this one's actually got quite a cool ability. So when summoned, as long as all the creatures in your starting deck are Nords, as long as he's on the field, when you destroy an opponent's rune, they don't draw the card until the end of their turn. So what this means is, let's say you smash through a rune and they would have got a prophecy. Instead of them instantly being able to use that and destroy one of your units or stop you from attacking again, they won't have that ability, but they still will before their next turn. So it's not going to like negate monsters from being summoned through prophecy. It's just the timing of the reaction comes at a point, which means that they can't stop whatever you're doing on that turn. Meaning this is a unit that your opponent would really have to heavily focus on getting rid of, or if they have enough forces, they can just keep on wailing on your face. Right, so next we have the Collodion Bannerlord, a 6-cost 2/2, who, when summoned, as long as your deck's just filled with Imperials, he will fill both your lanes with Imperial recruits and give all other units +1/+1 and guard. So that doesn't include himself, so he doesn't come a 3/3 with guard. So the main aim of this is just because Imperials, they're all about swarm, they're all about just coating up the area. So for 6-cost, filling up your entire board, as long as it's got the space, it's very, very good. Especially as all of them are guards, except this one. But because they're all very weak, it does mean that your opponent can quite easily just stomp through them. So if they've got things with breakthrough, they're still able to damage you. If they've got their own guard, they're still going to have to throw, or you're still going to throw a lot of your units at it to destroy them. So there is some form of balance here. And I still think this would be quite a nice card for Imperials. Next we have the Hist-infused Legend. Yeah, I couldn't really think of a last word, so I thought, Elder Scrolls Legends, slap on Legend. And again, 6-cost 5/5, and has the ability that when summoned, he will also summon a random Argonian, not from your deck, just a random one in the game. And you will gain max magicka equal to that creature's power. And this card will gain +1 health and +1 power, depending on the amount of magicka that you would have gained. So this could just hit, say, some like an Archene Venom Tongue, whatever it's called. So you gain 1 magicka, and this will become a 6/6. But this could also hit one of the higher up things, or it could just hit something like Swims at Night, something that's really strong for Argonians, and make this a 10/10 and give you 5 extra magicka. So it's that kind of RNG which is used to balance it from being ridiculously overpowered. Okay, next we have the Caravan Smuggler, 6-cost 3/4, and if your deck's filled with Khajiit, this card will gain charge and can move lanes to attack if needed. When this creature pilfers, this would have to also be while your full deck's Khajiit. He only gets that ability from that. He gains 2 power and 2 health, and you get to draw a Khajiit from your deck and reduce its cost by 2. I forgot to write from your deck, sorry about that. But the idea is just then that kind of gives you that bit of draw power and buff that you get from the lower cost Khajiits. So actually having a kind of later on resource which does both of those abilities in one, but costs a lot more, is kind of a nice kind of mix of a card. And it's something that I was kind of expecting a legendary card for Khajiits to already have, but I guess it just doesn't. Okay, so moving on to Redguard, we have the Blade of Strasse McCoy, a 6 cost for free, and if your starting deck's all Redguards, you'll draw 3 random items, give them all +1/+1, a random keyword, and reduce their costs by 2. So this is basically just a card that you plop down and gain a bunch of items in hand so you can kind of mess with. And as they're cheaper, it means that you could easily hold them back for, say, when you've got the correct board control, so like Sparksmith and stuff like that. And one of the things that I'd say doesn't make this too powerful is the fact that, again, there's the RNG in the items, the RNG in the keywords, as well as, I guess with those two together, you might want to say it should be 2 random items, but that's one of these things that we can kind of discuss and change in the comments and whatnot. But it's something that wouldn't gain any buffs from cards previously buffing your deck, so it does have some sort of balance to it. Okay, next for Bretons, I wasn't really too sure what to do for this one, so I kind of did a mix of a few cards already in the game. And this is the Bound Armor Conjurer, a 6 cost 4/4, who, when summoned, if all your starting cards are Bretons, it will gain ward and you will gain a ward. And when this creature is destroyed, you'll give yourself another ward and it will deal 1 damage for each friendly ward on your side, including yourself. So it's a mix of that Dark Elf card which gives you a ward while it's got a ward, and it's a mix of High King Emmerich, but obviously as it's not a unique legendary, you can have multiple of these in deck, which is what kind of gives it a slight bit of utility over High King Emmerich, who is a unique legendary. And obviously giving yourself a ward's always great, especially if you're against an aggro deck, because it will slow them down a bit, and it will allow you just to kind of take a few more turns to kind of set up your field properly. Moving on to Bosma, we have the only card which actually has some form of ability without having a full deck of one type, and that is the top line, which just says this card can attack creatures with cover. And its summon ability is if all creatures in your starting deck are Wood Elves, this card gains lethal and cover. When this card attacks a creature with cover, it's immune to damage. So this is basically something that you'd have sitting in the shadow lane, just going ham on all your opponent's new units that they put down. And as it's got 2 power, it means that just like a simple curse or something like that isn't going to get rid of its full power, meaning it loses lethal. And it's definitely something that would be a kind of dreadful pain of people's shadow lanes, especially with that card which turns both lanes into the shadow lane. So it's something that you'd need to throw like a guard down at or something like that just to kind of counter and get rid of. Okay, and moving on to Dunmer, we have the Varney Inconvenience, a 3 cost 1/1, who, if all the cards in your deck are Dark Elves, will spawn a copy of this card in the other lane as well. And when this card is destroyed, you can activate the abilities of 2 Last Gasps in your graveyard, excluding this card, because that doesn't mean you could then go, oh, I'll activate, say, Brutal Ashlander and this card, and with that I'll choose Brutal Ashlander and this card, and keep on doing that on repeat to get an OTK. That's not what's going on here. It's just one that would allow you to choose 2 other cards in your graveyard which have that ability and then use them. And the reason why it's called Varney Inconvenience is because in Varney culture, if you want someone's job, you just kill them. And this guy would clearly be taking up a role that someone wants, and Daisy want him out of the way to abuse his power. Hence the reason he's like that. And I know he's an assassin deck card wise, but would fit into Varney, and you can perfectly do that, although it would mean you'd have to get even more Dark Elves with endurance as well. And finally we have the Beat Stick for Mages, the Falmor Vanguard, a 12 cost 0/1, who costs less for each action in your discard pile. And when summoned, if all creatures in your starting deck are High Elves, he'll gain Drain and +1/+1 for each different action in your discard pile. So if you've got 2 Piercing Javelins, that's only going to count as 1, for instance. So this is something that kind of the longer the game goes on, the easier it is to summon and the more deadly it becomes, as not only is it going to be a massive beat stick, but it's also going to have drain and kind of help you stay alive, really. Meaning that if your control cards fail to pull through, you'll have this, which you can just fling at someone's units and will quite easily destroy them. See, it does seem quite powerful at first, but then again it's something that you have to wait a while to summon, and there are other cards already in the game like Crystal, Keep, Person, whatever it is, which is pretty much the same. But that's going to end today's video. I hope you guys have enjoyed. It's been a while because of having that week of just doing Elder Scrolls Legends deck guide videos, but I'm going to try and keep doing this weekly still. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.